Looks like you got some sun, dude.
Nate, cool.
Me or Ross?
We are live. Me? Did I get sun?
No, Nate looks like he got some sun.
Yeah,
I did. I got a little in. I was in Nashville for Labor Day weekend.
Nice.
That's awesome. What did you do in Nashville? Just hung out?
Yeah, pretty much. My buddies, they live in Franklin, so like 20, 30 minutes away from the city. But yeah, just kind of hung out. It was fun. Some college buddies.
It's funny. I hear about Franklin a lot. I think there are a lot of jobs there, maybe like pharma or something. I just hear the name Franklin, Tennessee a lot.
It's exploding right now.
Okay.
It's exploding.
There you
go. Not exactly sure why, but it's grown a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. As a New Yorker, I don't know anything west of the Hudson River, so gosh, if I know. But anyway, Nate, it was great seeing you last week. We're going to talk a little bit about why you're in New York City, and I want to hear a little bit about your experience. We can't talk about results. That is a secret for us, but everyone's going to have to watch the video. It's going to be really cool. But I don't think Nate really needs an introduction. Nate has been making AI agents for just as long as we have, and a good friend of our company. He's really well known on YouTube. I will say, for anyone out there, if you've somehow not seen Nate's YouTubes, definitely check them out. When we were at this N8N event, this is what I was referring to, where it was an N8N launch type of event, but select people were invited. And then the next day, there was a little bit of a battle between you and I don't know the other individual's name to make an AI agent, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But it was a really great meeting of the minds. But what really caught me, and not of much surprise, Nate, but you are a celebrity amongst these ranks. I mean, it is just, gosh darn the truth. So that must be cool. Let's start there. How does it feel being a YouTube celebrity? People were taking pictures. I was happy. I got to get out of the way and take pictures of you. How does it feel?
I mean, it's all relative, right? Like at an N8N community event, it definitely felt, it was fun to meet up with people that had either been interacting with my LinkedIn or in my community, stuff like that. But I mean, in the general world, no one knows who I am. But it was fun. It was fun. I'd say that's why I like San Francisco, though, because when I was in San Francisco, me and Nick Sarayev were walking around the financial district, and a few people did say, like, "Are you guys Nick and Nate?" Which was kind of cool. But otherwise, but it's fun. It's fun because there's so much going on in the space, and there's a lot of guru hype, and there's a lot of, like, regardless of whatever you're putting out, like, there's negative comments or whatever it is. So it's always good to hear that people have, like, genuinely learned from my videos or made money from my videos, stuff like that.
What's a little bit of the secret sauce? I mean, obviously there are trade secrets. We don't have to go there, but what's the secret sauce of getting such a huge following so quickly and people really latching onto you? Maybe it's hard to answer. I have some answers, but what strategies did you do to attract so many YouTube fans that ultimately have fallen in love with you, and understandably so?
I have some answers too.
I want to hear Nate.
I mean, I think the first secret sauce is you start spamming content on a platform that's exploding. That was like a big, super lucky timing for me. The second secret sauce I'd say is it has to be something that you're just, like, genuinely passionate about, because that gives you just, like, infinite energy, which is, like, if you have that, it's kind of a cheat code. And then the third one, which is what I attribute people actually sticking around, is just because I think that my background helped me phrase things in ways that are just, like, very digestible. And I think that's probably the biggest one. Like, I would use, like, visuals along with my N8N stuff to demonstrate concepts like, what RAG is, stuff like that. And I think people just really resonated with, like, that very in layman's terms type of explanations.
Yeah, that's 100% it. You're probably the best teacher on YouTube right now. And I don't know how you come up with topic ideas and then also build it and then show how you built it constantly. Like, that was my biggest hurdle, was like, okay, I got to build it first, and then I got to say how I built it. And by the time I finished building it the first time, I already have a million ideas for how I could have done it better. What's your process like?
Yeah, that's very true. And I guess I try to just build things at a high level, and I guess sort of talk about, like, sometimes what's wrong with this system, or, like, how you could improve it.
Yeah.
Because especially when I'm giving out all the templates for free, it would be very tough to, like, make something very valuable for tons of people. As far as, like, my idea generation, though, it's it's super easy because of YouTube comments and the communities and stuff like that, and sort of like, you know, what's trending.
Yeah. How do you feel about all the hate that I feel like it died out a little bit, but there was like a moment where people were really going after like the innate-in template, you know, AI automation guys, you know, all of that mess. What was your feeling around that?
Yeah, that's why I was pretty glad that I approached my channel the way I did, where, you know, if you go watch my first 120 videos, I never once talked about money or like selling this or monetizing this at all.
Yeah.
And that's also what I thought was cool, was because I wasn't talking about money, but I was still getting like inbound leads. And I'm not sure if you guys have seen, but like as of recently, the past month or so, I've been putting out some content that's a bit more about like the business side and how you sell stuff. And that was basically me vetting maybe 6 or 7 different YouTube strategists. I took a YouTube course, finally found a strategist team that I liked. And, you know, I just wanted to make sure that the transition was very, very safe and sort of like didn't bridge the gap in a nice way. Because I mean, the truth is, and I think this is where a lot of people's like gripe come from with like the gurus, is that they know it's easier to make money off of info than actually implementation. And so they say they're making all this money, but really it's all coming from info. But I've tried to be transparent about that. You know, like I did a podcast with Liam and I broke down that I do make most of my money from info, but we are still implementing and we still do understand. And I think just the raw transparency, which is something I've tried to have from the beginning, is just what people will resonate with.
Yeah. I'm going to keep riffing Ross if that's cool.
Of course.
I'm curious about a little bit of inside baseball. So I saw today Millen is starting YouTube. Obviously got to see your boys in New York. And you guys have an interesting setup. Can you dig in there and like, and I know what it looks like, right? So like, let's inform everybody on what the setup is, but then what I'm interested in personally, selfishly, is like, where are you guys going? What's the goal here? Like, what are your plans?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we get this question a lot because truthfully, like when I was talking to the strategist, they were like, you know, you have like at this point 280,000 subs, but I would go to bet that like only a few thousand of them actually know you have True Horizon, because like it's hardly talked about. But we started working together in January. Millen is effectively the CEO, Tyler is effectively the CTO, and then I'm like a CGO is kind of what we're calling it at the moment, but it's not like a traditional CGO role.
What is that?
A growth operator or growth officer. And it really started just the 3 of us. All of us were boots on the ground. I was taking all the discovery and sales calls. We even had like Tyler developing the majority of the solutions up front. And now it's evolved into, you know, like a team of engineers. We have different pods. We have like, you know, Millen is in charge of sales and operations. And then I'm like hardly involved in the agency unit. Where I see us going is, you know, True Horizon having different branches where we have, you know, agency, which is custom implementation and consulting. Obviously, we have a bunch of like products that we're starting to work on because we've seen common themes, and we have like, you know, products that we use internally. And then we also want to have sort of like an education branch. So that's kind of like the 3 main pillars that I see holding up True Horizon in the future. Right now, it's basically just been agency. But with education, you know, we're kind of targeting the people that are more advanced. So like developer certification, that sort of education, but also education around like how to do what we did with our agency. And that's actually something we're going to be launching soon. We're launching our incubator program in about a month. And that's going to be kind of like a cohort system where it's like way more high touch. It's the promise of that is not, we'll help you get your first client. We kind of want to stay out of that arena. We're more so like you can get clients, but you're having trouble scaling. And that's what this incubator is for. And then of course, yeah, the products will kind of feed into all of that is kind of the idea.
Yeah, you guys have been working on that for a while. I know that's been part of the roadmap. So it'll be cool when it launches. My last kind of thing I'm interested in getting your thoughts on is the AI bubble. What are you taking it seriously? Eventually, we are in a bubble, right? Like I think everyone knows that. Eventually, it'll pop. What do you think happens when it pops? What do you think happens to your YouTube growth, to your business? Are you concerned at all about it? What are you thinking?
I guess before I dig into that, could you define for me what you kind of like, what does popping mean to you?
It's a good question. I think Well, right now, I guess the mindset is mostly around investor dollars. So it's like insane valuations, and then downstream of that, insane salaries, right? But like insane valuations, tons of investment dollars on just an idea or just a team, and and what would have been a 10x valuation is now a 20x valuation, and it pops when investors start to get more frugal. And it's not just like, I need to get involved in the space, I'm going to throw everything at the wall, it doesn't matter if something sticks, I win regardless. When they actually start to get like strategic about where they're placing their bets, and tighter with the purses, that will have downstream effects of like, okay, now there's not a bunch of capital, now people aren't hiring as much, which means products aren't coming out as fast, which means people start competing on price with their products and stuff, and then the customers start to get a little bit more, and it might happen the other way around. It's like a chicken and the egg. Like maybe the customers actually aren't buying as much. Maybe there's apathy happening, and so we see, Nvidia numbers drops, or other startup, their reports come out and things are a little bit negative, and so investors start to get scared, right? So a lot of it is sentiment, but a lot of it is actual, like, what's the impact on the economy, like, realistically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's interesting because as we move towards that space where it's almost like the fog kind of lifts and people are brought back down to earth, but ultimately still, like, going to be a huge paradigm shift that we've never seen, like this amount of technological advancement. But at the same time, what's happening too is like everything is getting easier for everyone to do, which I guess makes those skills less valuable when someone with no background can actually build like a full web app and build the backend infrastructure as well. As far as like my channel, True Horizon, where we see that going when all this kind of stuff happens is, I think ultimately there's always still going to be that need, of course, for like businesses that can't afford consulting and implementation from, like your Accenture, McKinsey, BCG, those type of groups. And the cool thing is that because it's all becoming democratized, single people businesses or smaller businesses can start to actually like do really cool things like that because of the barrier to entry is so much lower. But
Right.
I've never really thought about the YouTube channel though. I think that's interesting. I think the content probably will have to shift. I think the type of content that you guys put out kind of targeted towards like I don't know, business owners that need to really think about what to do with this AI adoption. I think that type of content is something that will probably start to become higher value because it's more about like, how do you use your brain to think about the business processes and like moving forward with an actual operation rather than just like the very, very front of like developing a solution. I don't know. It's a good question though. I haven't really thought about that too much on like the content side of things.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably going to happen in waves and cycles, right? There'll probably be one initial pop that's more like economic based, and then things will get hyper again, because realistically the reason why N8N is taking off and people are using it and building it, and there's like an interest in like software, whether it's like low code, no code, or traditional software development, is like there's still it's still experimental. We're still in the R&D phase of like, how do we build orchestration engines, how do we do vector embedding, how do we piece it all together into something that's actually a holistic application that works and is reliable. And it's like fundamentally we're just trying to make sure the LLMs do what we want them to do when we want them to do it, and the quality we want them to do it. Like that is like the core question, and that no one has like fully cracked it yet. So like there's still work to be done on that front anyway. It'll just be interesting to see how everything ends up playing out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people too have that. They're not actually thinking about the core problem. Like they decide that they want an agent, but why did they decide on an agent? Just because the bubble, rather than like, if we actually unpack like what you're looking to do, there's probably a solution out there already that's cheaper and faster and better, stuff like that too.
Totally. Go ahead, Ross.
Cool. Those are awesome. Yeah. Obviously, Devin, if anything comes up, keep going. That was a great conversation. I'm not sure if this is the smoothest transition, but I'll do my very best. This was a question I presented at this kind of smaller gathering, but South Alabama AI Society, and I'm actually speaking again this evening. And one of the questions that came up is around the bubble, and actually your clarifying question is a really important one of the future. I'm going to ask, like, what do you mean by the bubble? I thought that was a really nice pause there. But the question ultimately, just breaking it down from the guy, was, do you think that at some point we're going to converge on some kind of standard operating system for agents, or are we going to remain fragmented with different frameworks, different platforms, thousands of different tools, options? Where do you see the future, maybe short term and even a little bit more long term into 2026 as it occurs for smaller businesses versus the larger ones?
Yeah, it's a good question. And immediately what I wanted to ask is, like, how do you define a standard OS?
I'm not answering
but right
that
now
question.
I know.
Well,
we're just
let me flesh that out for a second. I think there's like the Apple operating system level of OS. Then there's like the market dominant platform that people use, like Salesforce or HubSpot, right? That would be something where, and then there's Gmail, right? Everybody uses Gmail or Outlook. And so there's kind of workspace platforms that almost operate as like, they're not like as OSs almost for a business, right? So there's different levels to this OS concept. Yeah.
Yeah. And right now there's just so many options. End-to-end, Make, LangChain, Crew, AI, Python. And I think they all serve like slightly different purposes. And I would feel like my gut is telling me that it's going to be a lot more of like a layered ecosystem rather than like, Windows or Apple sort of thing. And that's because of the fact that like this tech is just getting more and more democratized, and people from different backgrounds are going for different options because they just resonate more. I don't know how much you guys have played with Lindy, but Lindy is just like a lot more accessible for, I would say, the general population compared to N8N.
Yeah.
Even though N8N has been blowing up, and I think it's just it definitely was designed more for like the technical folks up front, and now like they're adding all these features because that's just the way that technology is moving. So I really think that it kind of is like whatever you start to build on, as long as you can understand like how to manage context and how to make it scale and how you tie that into like different workflows. And I think in my mind, the more important thing is like each organization deciding on like their standard OS and then kind of like building on top of that, rather than, or maybe it's like industry specific too. But I definitely don't see like N8N becoming the only place that AI agents and automations are built. Similarly with like other tools, but of course the open source nature, the open source, they call it what, fair code or code accessible or something like that.
Yeah.
That's obviously huge for them. So
yeah,
I guess those are my thoughts there.
Yeah. I mean, there's just everyone's all of this is just fundamentally software development and mostly backend and incorporating LLMs into that. And it's like, the opportunity for everything to be custom is there, right? But we've seen many times in the past where like companies have wanted to have the ultimate custom option, but there's no customer user adoption because it's just too much. And so there's got to be some levels of or layers of abstraction, at least on the back end front. I think LangChain's doing a lot there. Crew AI is doing a lot there. That's really interesting. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. I think that for the layman though, like you're saying, Lindy, that's more the direction I think things go, because it just opens up the market. Like, so you don't have to learn N8N to piece together something. Some things are already kind of built in out of the box, and most businesses have the same. They all got sales, they all got marketing, they all got some kind of ops or administrative layer, customer support, whatever, right? Like, there's not a ton of different iterations for the structure of a business necessarily. So there probably will be some kind of standardization that abstracts like even further than what N8N or even like Lindy does, I think. We'll see. Not really a question.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point though.
Yeah.
What do you got, Ross?
Great point. Yeah, this one I was definitely curious in hearing your thoughts, because I think I have a couple on my end. But what workflows or industry use cases do you wish people were talking more about, or you wish you had the opportunity to build more, that people were coming to you? Like, you just know this is a great idea. It just seems to be going under the radar now for whatever reason you might have. Do you have kind of an industry use case or workflow that might be in that barrel?
Yeah. This one's interesting to me because the nature of my channel and community is completely just like, there's no niche, I've seen a huge demand for content creation systems, whether that's like, short form, long form, or just written posts. Obviously, like a huge use case that we see for actual clients is, sales processes and sort of like those operational automations. But the way I'm going to spin this is like something that I think is really important and would be very, very cool is more of like people that are able to start thinking about like automating QA of their systems. And I think that would be insanely valuable, because right now it's like we have an evaluation feature in end-to-end, but besides that, it's a pretty manual process. And like, there's a lot that goes on there in QA, right? And I think the most annoying part, if I was like a client, would be collecting all of that data, collecting the data set that we're going to use to QA the system. And if we had agents that could basically be able to understand what's the use case of this automation, like what type of data do we need, and then the agent can go look inside and get everything it needs, and then also QA the system. I think that would be huge. Yeah.
Testing is just like a brutal process right now.
Yeah, and it's not cheap.
It's not. It just is so many.
I was, before the Agentic Arena, I knew a little bit about what we were going to be doing, and I was just testing different stuff all day. And I ran through probably $260 worth of open router credits because I was running these evals with like heavy models, and just like trying different stuff. And I wasn't even thinking about it. It's so easy. You click the run eval button and you sit and wait, and then you go check open router the next day, and it's like, oh man.
Yeah. I haven't really had a chance to play with the N8N's eval system. Why is it so expensive? Is it just like many different LLM calls to analyze different things, or?
Yeah, well, it depends on the eval, of course. There's some evals where it's like, does the expected output explicitly match the given output? And that's easy. But when you get into like AI correctness eval or helpfulness eval, then you're doing, all of that. And whatever's going on, the pre-processing and the workflow to get to the eval. Like I said, I was using heavy models and passing lots of context and just trying stuff there. So
yeah.
Did
it work?
Yeah. It's cool. Obviously you have that, you have to keep in mind, like you're using AI to evaluate, but as long as you can at least isolate that variable and then use the same LLM for all your evals, at least there's some level of consistency. But I will say, like, if you ran the same input and output 10 times on the eval, you wouldn't get a 4 out of 5 every single time. Like, I've seen some variance, even if it's the exact same output. So there's always that too.
Yeah, we ran into that problem with a customer service refund pushback system we built, and we're actively building to extend its capabilities. This client basically processes like 250,000 customer support tickets a month. And, we wanted to have an agent do the eval check, but it's like, it's just like an endless thing. Cause it's like, well, how do we know how can we trust that eval 100%? And then you want to put another LLM on it to test that one. And then you want to put another, and then it's just like, at some point, if you want to make it really good, a human's got to get in there and do the data labeling, essentially. Like there is no avoiding that at the moment, I think, if you want to make it like really, trusting. So yeah, I don't know if there's a solve,
Yeah, I agree. But it would be cool.
It would be sick.
It would be pretty cool if all of these agents were just like self-learning, or had like, a doctor agent that could just constantly be fixing them, adjusting prompts, adjusting context, whatever it is. That'd be really cool. Maybe our grandkids' kids will be doing that kind of stuff.
Our great grandkids. Yeah.
Oh yeah, great kids.
I mean, it's interesting because it's like AI. The number one thing with AI is trust, and it's the same thing with FSD, where it's like, do we trust this thing? Where whatever output it gets me, it's reliable. Like when I do a deep research, I click on all the links just to make sure. It's like, when do we get to a point where I don't need to do that? And realistically, with humans, human to human, we just kind of like assume the trust, right? The reality is we don't know 100% if we should trust, right? Like, and so, but we've made social contracts to where it's like, okay, you know, like, because we have the social contract, I know 99.9% of the time, I trust that if I walk into a Walmart in my neighborhood, I'm going to be fine, right? Like, somebody's not going to, like, even though they could, they're not going to walk by and stab me necessarily. And so I trust it, and so I go to Walmart. But like, with these LLMs, it's like, where does it need to get to? How good does it need to get? Because people still think about it as software, and people are like, this should just work. Like my Wi-Fi was out for 5 hours yesterday, and it's like, this should just work. What are we doing here? You know, and which this is an aside. My parents and other people are like, what are you going to do if AI goes out? What if the AI goes out? And it's like, well, the Wi-Fi just went out, and y'all were freaking out just like I was. So, you know, we're all reliant on some piece of technology. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was an awesome dialogue there. Just had a quick question for you, Nate, out of curiosity. How, I guess the first one's kind of like a yes, maybe no. Do you get a lot of requests for people like scraping social media, trying to use social media posts, and then for influencers to get a leg up over other influencers, knowing what to like, all that? Is that something you guys see occasionally?
Yeah, definitely a lot of people that want to be able to scrape Instagram, find viral content. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are looking to do stuff like that, and I don't know exactly what for, but yeah, I mean, like, I think the past week alone, I've seen so many posts about like RSS feeds, and I know that's like not exactly social media, but yeah, I mean, just like building your own internal system of like information, idea generation, knowledge, kind of like, you know, I'm not sure how, like, I know newsletters are a big deal, but it's almost like people are trying to just create their very own, like, really custom newsletter feed for whatever purpose. But yeah, definitely seeing a lot of like scraping socials.
And my question with that, and obviously don't reveal any trade secrets, and if you got to punt it, all good, but how are you getting around some of the difficulties? Like for LinkedIn, you know, they're very against any kind of collaboration scraping. X traditionally had a very expensive API, but I think that's changed. Instagram has been a little bit better. How do you manage clients and their expectations around API costs, or if something is totally just not doable, or do you find ways kind of around it to be able to scrape LinkedIn a little bit better than some other folks and get a leg up?
Yeah, I mean, I know. Yeah, LinkedIn is pretty strict, but I think there's always workarounds. I mean, for now, I mean, you've got like computer use. You could do a traditional like kind of coding route. I don't do much of it. Like me personally, the only scraping I really do is like my YouTube comments. I'm not sure. We would have to ask like Millen and Tyler about like clients actually wanting to scrape like socials and stuff. But there is a ton of expectation management and alignment. And I think that the most important piece there is like you have to do that from day one, because you do run into this area where whether the client is technical or not, they kind of think that they have it figured out a lot of times. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like we really like to work with people that are passionate and like excited, but there's also a degree of like, you know, just because they want this doesn't mean that that's probably like the actual best thing right now for their business, given like what we've heard and given what we've seen and given what we've worked on in the past. And I think that it's really interesting because the majority of like my YouTube videos that have done really well in terms of views are the ones that are like truly not all that super useful. You know, they're the ones that are like cool, autonomous, flashy, you know, optimized for virality. And when you think about the ones that are probably the most useful for a business they're all the ones that get the lowest views because they're just like not clickable and they're just kind of boring. But boring is beautiful when it comes to automation, because the thing that I like to think about that really changed my perspective is like, how can you create scalable systems? And I think everyone may have a little bit of a different definition to that, but what that means to me is build an automation that grows the business. And as it grows the business, the automation gets used more and like the throughput increases, and you're literally creating like this flywheel of exponential value rather than, personal assistant agent. Sure, you're saving some time, you're growing the business, but does that business growth mean that the personal assistant gets used more? Not necessarily.
Right.
So that's something that I try to think about a lot that really helps me sort of like think about where to start.
Yeah, that's actually a great mental framework, because I'm thinking the customer service one again. It's like we use it initially, which should give them more working capital on the back end because their lifetime value of the customer goes up, so they can increase their customer acquisition cost and outbid their competitors on ads. And so they're investing more working capital, which should mean more customers come through, which should mean more customer support tickets are being handled. And so the system load starts to increase and grow, which is a good thing, right? That's interesting. I mean, it's the same with SaaS, where it's like, okay, if this SaaS product is helping this company, like the CRM, then we should see an increase in the number of seats being added, right? Because the company's growing, they're hiring more people, et cetera. So yeah, I like that framework. That's cool. Good job.
Yeah,
thank you. I hope that answered the question, Ross.
No, it absolutely did. And this was selfishly for me. I hope other people got something out of it too. But I got a lot of, you had a lot of really great things to say there. That was awesome, Nate. I think this is the third time in 3 interviews or discussions that I've asked this, and you've generally had the similar answer, but I love to see how your thought process evolves. So how do you decide now what not to automate and where human input is still necessary, and how are you pushing that limit to try to make more and more autonomy, which is obviously our goal, but you want it to do the job correctly?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think we're speaking the same language, but I try to think more so like what not to automate. No, I try to think less what not to automate and more like to what extent do we automate, or how far do we take the automation? And usually like, where that kicks in is like anything that's going to be going out to a stakeholder or going out on public in the like where clients are seeing that this is coming from like our brand or my voice or something like that. And the reality is like kind of what you were talking about earlier, Devin, with like, how much do you trust it? We'll never be able to trust it 100%. But if you can get somewhere where you're getting like 90% of the way there and you do manually the rest of the 10%, that's still like massive. If you have an hour process that would take you an hour manually, but now you're getting a brief handed to you, so it takes you 10 minutes to review and check and then shoot it off. That is still obviously like insanely valuable. But I think that human input is necessary probably for the majority of use cases, at least at the very end. It's hard for me to say kind of like a blanket statement of like where I would draw that line, but I think you just kind of know. And I think the first thing that I would try to think about would be always capture baseline data. So whether you're thinking about like, AI or not, just capturing baseline data is a great move, because then you have, like case studies and you can objectively show like what the system does. But I think the most important metric for this topic when it comes to baseline data is like the error percentage, because even humans still make an error every once in a while. And so if like on average out of these 100 tickets, a human will make a mistake twice. And if you can see that the AI would actually do 1 mistake every 100, or like, going to be a less percentage, then I would say that's kind of the green light. Of course, you still want to have that aspect of like logging every single interaction and every single output, and every single thing needs to be logged in order to actually like understand if that is the case or not. Because this is something I say a lot when it comes to like building automations, and people ask like, what is production ready? The truth is, at least in my mind, like when you're wireframing out and you're building your system and you're testing, you can find some stuff, right? Like you'll find edge cases, but you don't know what you don't know. And so when you actually start your exposure of like, maybe the client's QAing with their use cases, or maybe they actually push it live for a week. there will be other edge cases that pop up that you just wouldn't have thought of. And obviously, like if you don't have that data, if you're not seeing the log, then you have no idea what to even fix, or you have to click into each execution and you would, want to shoot yourself.
Yeah.
So the patterns there, whether they're good or bad, are perfect because, like, of course, patterns and boring in automation is beautiful. And then you can easily sort of like figure out a guardrail that you can build in that system to protect against that pattern or that edge case. And I don't know, maybe sometimes you start off like more conservative where human input's always there, but then you can see like the consistency over time and then slowly sort of like release more and more to the AI. But obviously like that's kind of the way that I would start to think about that.
Yeah, it's a risk calculation, right? Like, this thing is like making some kind of decision, or it's generating some kind of output, wherever this lands, or the importance of that decision at that step, really matters downstream. And it's like, how much of a risk is it, right? And if it's too much, humans got to oversee. Dude, and you probably know like what a lot of AI startups are doing, and they're getting funded, is they're basically pitching themselves as like, this is like an AI agent, system, and a fully agentic system. But literally at first, only 20% of it is like actually AI, and they have like an army of people on the back end executing the other capability sets. And their plan really is to reduce the number of people, doing those things and increase the capabilities on the AI side, which I think is a cool strategy. And like our investor is like their whole core competency is standing up like offshore teams and training them and whatever. And so like they're leaning in on that, where it's like, hey, if you guys need a human in the loop system that doesn't require like experts necessarily, at least for now, we can stand that up for you to call out to them. So it's like, it's interesting. And then the other side of it is the scalability thing you said. In order to be scalable, it's got to be like a framework, right? It's got to be more of like a holistic architecture, not a hard automation every time. And that also helps with capturing edge cases, right? Like it can't be scalable unless the framework, the architecture is set up to handle edge cases generally, right? If you go too broad, it doesn't work. But it's finding that Goldilocks zone, I think, is like the main challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you guys see, I saw an announcement maybe 3 months ago or something, and it was like there was a startup that was supposedly AI, but it was like 400 engineers just working 24/7.
Yeah. It was like a few months ago that came out. I was like, oh my God. And I guarantee there's a lot of other startups doing the same thing, it's crazy.
Well, we had a serious conversation, Devin, when we were in one of the self-driving cars in Austin. Is it really self-driving, or is someone behind it? But I assume they're self-driving. It was
like
pretty cool.
On a little Wii remote in some back room.
Yeah.
The way, I mean, we were at like a 4-way intersection, taking a left turn at a yellow yield light, and it did a little peak, because it was just like a tight road. The cars were a little bit further out than they should have been into the intersection, and it just kind of like crept forward as if like a human was like literally doing that to peek to see if there's room to turn. It was like that's too human-like for there not to be like a bunch of guys in the valley operating some
dudes in some basement. Well, once it made a pretty aggressive move. At that point, I was like, I don't think it's a human. Only a computer would do this move, and it was totally safe for it. But anyway,
you loved it, dude. You loved it.
I loved every second of it. Of course, I was going to keep sending it back until I got an autonomous car.
Yeah. I mean, the thing's got no road rage. It's got an insane amount of patience. So it's got to be a robot.
Yeah.
Have you seen the videos of when they kind of are face to face with each other, and one needs to back out because like the road is closed or something? There were some funny videos in San Fran if you ever are bored of them trying to figure out what to do. Anyway,
That's fun.
That's what I call fun on a Saturday. I don't know about you guys. Well, we have a few more minutes. I want to talk a little bit at the end about the competition and just your experience, but let's see if I have one more good one that I want to ask beforehand. Yeah, this definitely is curious to me. You build very fast what's your framework for balancing speed with stability in the agent creation? Everyone wants their agent in 5 minutes, but we all know the reality. How are you able to balance those two?
Yeah, so I think, well, the first thing to preface is like all the YouTube videos, like the templates are very high level, and I build those pretty quickly. But I think when you're saying speed and stability, you're more talking like the system itself.
Yes.
Right. So I think the first thing is like, you kind of got to think about like, what is the actual business use case of this, and like who interfaces with it, and what's like the user journey of either using or interacting with the system. And I think a lot of times speed doesn't really matter. I mean, you do have your use cases where you want to look at some stuff like, vector instead of long context, or, well, that's also for cost too, or parallelization, or whatever it is for those types of use cases. But I do think that a lot of them are kind of just like processes that happen on the back end where you really don't, it doesn't matter if it happens in 30 seconds or 5 minutes. And at that point, you're just thinking about like what actually brings us the highest quality output there.
Yeah.
But as far as like different levers you can pull, there's different ways you can set up the database. There's different ways you can query it. There's different models to use. Like that's one of the things I was evaluating heavy for the agentic arena was like, what's the speed of all these different models, and how much context can you shove in there, stuff like that. But once again, I think it's like hard to make a blanket statement. I think the more reps you get building anything, you start to get like this mental checklist of, if this happens, then I need to do this, or if I need this, I'm going to start to do this. Very similar to the way where people ask about which nodes to master, or like how do you handle all these errors. And like you have this method you can use, but ultimately I feel like I use the same, like with 15 core nodes in N8N. If I had to pick 15, I feel like I could build almost anything with those 15 nodes. Probably less than that, honestly. When you consider like an HTTP request being one node, then you can really build anything with probably like 7 or 8 nodes. Like, and then at the same time, you have, you've probably seen a ton of different error messages, but you start to see the same like 5 or 6, and those are like the most common ones. And then you basically know, oh, okay, I see this. I know exactly where to go look, or I at least know exactly where, like what happened here. And I think it's kind of the similar thing for understanding when you have a finished product, what's like the ideal amount of time, cost, and like the type of quality you're looking for. And then you just kind of pull those levers. And of course, like constant iteration is like the most important part there.
Yeah. I'm curious on your prompting. How deep have you gone there? Like how, because you can get like 80 to 90% there with just like detail prompt and like ChatGPT, and it spits you back a pretty solid thing. But yeah, I'm curious what your explorations there have been.
Yeah, I think first of all, there's obviously a huge difference between prompting for prompting for content, or prompting for tool usage and like reasoning.
Yeah.
Typically when I start off, if I'm prompting for content, I always use like a Claude or ChatGPT. Yeah. If I'm prompting for tool usage, I handwrite those prompts every time, because there's a couple of reasons why. You can, with how smart these models are now, and how each tool to your N8N agent has like kind of like an embedded description in there, you can spin up an agent with multiple tools and not even prompt it, and it will work. And then you can start to add a little more bit of like instructions to it, and sort of like some guardrails to keep it on track, or to have it optimized towards like an end goal. But I think the toughest part about that sort of prompting is like when you scale it up, because you know, okay, this is working with this chat model, with these 7 tools, it's working fine. But then you switch the chat model and it stops working. And now it's like, do I restructure the whole prompt, or do I go back to my old chat model? So the 2 most important things I think are, of course, once again, like logging. But when you're logging, also log like which version of the prompts you're using, and obviously like save all of your old prompts, save the model you used, save the knowledge base you used. And then as you kind of like add more tools, you just want to do that like one at a time. Because I think way too often I'll see people just have like, they'll add like 3 or 4 new tools, and then they'll just chuck it into ChatGPT and say, here's my system prompt, here's the 3 tools I added, here's what they do, and then they'll just kind of run wild. And then you just like, you don't know which line of the system prompt broke your agent. And then maybe you fix these 2 new tools are working, but now the first original one stopped working. Or maybe they're all still working, but they're not sending over like the right context to each one. So the way that I kind of go about that is just a very manual, honestly, kind of like meticulous process of just like logging everything and just doing one line at a time. So I know exactly like which variable, you know, it's all about like isolating one variable at a time.
Yeah. There's literally no other approach right now to take to it, honestly.
Yeah. And I mean, I see a ton of stuff about like prompt optimizers or like custom GPTs. I don't know if you have any experience there, but I've just like literally never even, like, I just don't see how a prompt optimizer that's like a very broad system prompted thing could help you out like in your use case and given the context that you have going through your system and stuff like that. So
yeah, exactly. It's too specific to use any of those tools. It just is. What happened?
Daniel dropped a GPT-5 prompt optimizer.
Yeah, it's very. He also wrote this to me. He showed me a picture of some swag with "Boring is Beautiful" N8N automations by Nate Herk. I'll send it around. So pretty cool stuff. Well, because Daniel had a really great question, let's go there, and then I have a couple quick ones for you, including talking about the competition. Do you have a sense of how your subscriber viewer base breaks down between people who are actively building and experimenting versus those who are more passive learners or consumers of your content? Do you have a sense?
I think so. My audience has gotten a lot broader. You know, it started off very like 99% male, 30 to 45 years old. And it's just broadened out a ton, which is cool. My gut is telling me that the majority of people that are watching my channel are people that actually are looking to implement for their own business and like build solutions without like hiring a team of like agency owners or hiring like an agency to do it for them. I don't have like hard data on that, but that's just what my gut tells me because of the way that like our communities break down. And it's pretty interesting because there are some people in the communities that are like pretty legit and like very experienced developers or running some pretty large operations. But the majority of people in the communities that are like vocal and engaged and active, those are the ones that are like trying to build a business with AI or trying to make money with AI. So it's almost like if you were to look in the communities, it would be like a misrepresentation of the actual breakdown, because the ones that are like really implementing and doing this for their own business, those are kind of like what I would call the lurkers, which are like engaging with the, you know, consuming the content, taking the course material, but not just like not very vocal about posting things or asking for support as much. But yeah, I do think the majority, I would say, is like business owners looking to implement.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this event, I'm gonna do a little segue to the event, Ross.
Yeah, let's do it. What's next?
First of all, what exactly was it? Who did you compete against? I think we all can guess what the results were in the end. So you don't have to say, but like, yeah, give us the rundown. What happened here?
Yeah, so it was called the Agentic Arena, which is apparently the first AI agent game show. And it was me versus Jack Roberts. If you guys are aware of Jack Roberts, he's been in the AI automation space for a long time. He was a big make.com guy. And yeah, we were pretty much like, we were told it was going to be 2 timed challenges where we had some sort of like, you know, prompt of an agent that we needed to build. And we were told that it was going to be like an AI evaluation on our workflow, which is interesting because that, you know, they weren't going from like, let's see who can build the most practical production ready build. They were going for like the marketing, the virality. Let's just show people how fun this kind of stuff can be. So that definitely changed like the mindset of actually building, because it was way more about like, I have this much time, I need to just build something that works, rather than like what I would do if I was really trying to build something for, you know, a client. But yeah, it was cool.
That's cool. You had a good experience?
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. There was like a, you know, a little studio audience, and we had people on either Team Herk or Team Roberts, and there was like the crowd was getting into it, and some trash talking going on, all in good fun. And then I'm not sure if you guys met Marcel, the guy that was Dr. Pure Eval.
I did.
He was just
a great guy. I had so much fun with him. He was great.
He was awesome. He was awesome. Yeah.
What did the winner get?
It was 10K cash and then like a little trophy.
Damn.
Nice. What means more, the trophy or the 10K if you were to win? We don't know.
The 10K.
I think what would mean more to the winner would be, hopefully they're bullish on the fact that AI agent game shows will be more common in the future. And then it's like, when you think back of like, you know, where the space is going, that like a lot of us are actually sitting in like a position to kind of like make our mark like on the space. And I think that not only just being a part of it, but winning the first one, if it ends up becoming something cool, would be something nice to look back on.
That's awesome.
And we'll find out on Monday.
We'll find out on Monday. Yeah.
Cool. And I think Daniel put the link in also to the Luma link, which I will be attending as well. That's exciting.
Let's should we got 9 minutes. Should we open up a couple of questions?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Anyone have any questions? Feel free to raise your hand, pipe up, or you can type it in the text box.
How you guys doing? It's Elijah Stanbaugh here.
Hey, Elijah.
What's up, man?
How's it going?
Good
to see you
How
guys.
are you doing?
Thanks. Good. Thank you for putting these on. So what I'm wondering about is more in the context of learning. I'm in the learning space. And so I think about project management in that context and learning as well. And what I'm wondering about are those re-entry points. So I know that we can take context for the LLMs as well and kind of partition them off. But from a human perspective, we're also going from like one context to another on a frequent basis. Now we can do summary and some of that, but are there some best practices that you found that help to increase human capacity in one sense, with this ability to now dialogue with a quote unquote teammate to kind of catch up to speed or guide and direct our thoughts? Does that make sense? You guys follow me?
Yeah. Nate, I have something. It's a little high level though, unless you want to hop in.
If you want to go for it, then I'll chime in after.
Yeah. First of all, big win last week for you guys. So there's this guy. He's kind of been doing the rounds on like podcasts because he has this book, and he talks about like the distributed kind of like brain of humanity, and that kind of being the thesis for why we've exploded. And basically, it's like back in the day, like thousands of years ago, we used to have to know how to hunt, and then we also had to know how to like cook, and we had to know how to do all of these things just to run our little tribe. And as we've scaled and built some civilization, those things that we had to know and keep in our brains, the memories and the knowledge of how to do the certain skills and whatever, got more specialized and more niched. And we've distributed kind of that knowledge across the civilization as a whole. And so there's a distributed human brain happening. I think AI basically explodes that, where it's like we now can distribute to LLMs a crap ton of information, and you know, and what does that mean post, right? Like, what do we keep in our brains at that point? He left the meeting, so I don't even know. But like, yeah, so I think that'll be interesting. Like, just from a high level, like conceptual standpoint, the fact that it can give you information very, very fast, also synthesize, reason about it, analyze it for you. You know, what do we do on top of that with it, right? What decisions are we making? What becomes our responsibility? That's kind of what that's just high level. Go ahead, Nate.
Your answer made me question if I understood the question correctly.
Maybe I didn't.
Well, let me say something in response to that, Devin. That I think that's very insightful. It also leads to this work that we can do with MCPs, and how we can, with, you know, whatever it is, Claude Code or whatever's running in the background with LangChain, can go through a process and do one step after another, remember what it's doing, build a plan, and execute against it. And I think that's where it gets really interesting, because, you know, I've been working on some vibe code projects and different things like that. And what took me years to do with my dev teams, like I could do in minutes and hours. And it's just phenomenal to me. You know, I have to pick my jaw up off the floor all the time and just say, okay, get over it. And just because I used to have to communicate this to another human or two people, they would have to go back and figure it out and then come back with a solution that was, again, broken or introduced another bug. And so I think what you're describing, Devin, is really interesting in the fact that we can now work. But the issue is, I think, as a human and as a learner, which I'm in the K-12 space, and, you know, the big issue there is that most educators are just, you know, it's an existential crisis. So it's like, don't let the kids cheat. Unfortunately, we haven't got over that hump yet generationally to where it's really teaching people how to use AI in the right way. But to your point, Devin, is how are we going to, when we have these tools that can manage multiple processes, I think the issue is going to become our own human capacity to keep up to speed, if that makes sense. So I don't know if that's something you've been working on. I know you guys talk about RAG and different things like that, but there's also a nuance inside of this that's like my own human capacity.
Yeah. So that you're speaking my language. This is stuff. So like, what I foresee is that it's more of like all the effort is up front. You know, it's like Abraham Lincoln spending 4 hours on sharpening the axe and 2 hours on actually cutting down the tree. It's like all of our effort is up front, and then we set it, and it goes for months, years, decades, potentially. And so we don't have to keep up. It's doing the thing that we need it to do autonomously, right? And if there are human in the loop elements that happens, and now that's from like a workflow, like operation standpoint. From a learning standpoint, I was talking with guys at A&M and how like or actually Washington and Lee, where I went to school. Basically, they said the professors decide what their AI strategy is going to be. And some of them, it's like, don't use it at all. Others, it's like, they're getting creative about it, which is, hey, this is the output we need ultimately. Who can create the best prompt to get this output? And then they start judging the prompts and how good you are at communicating with this thing, how clear your ideas are. And so when you're talking with your human devs, I imagine that there's a spectrum of your ability to communicate with them. If you were very terrible at it, it would take even more years and more money and a bunch of errors and bugs. If you were amazing at communicating, which would require actually deep technical knowledge, you know, and like all this other context, you would probably get it done much faster with them, right? Which is why like photographers are really good at getting better output from Midjourney. Developers are way faster and better at vibe coding solutions. They understand, they can speak the language, and so they can communicate more clearly. I think the communication, the clarity of thought, the ideas, like all of that is going to be extremely, like the liberal arts of it. Like it's going to be so freaking important.
Well, and that's why I think investors like a CTO co-founder, right? Yeah. So you see that trend even in the investment space, but and that's where like this AI CTO, whatever it is, what you're talking about on that 4-hour setup to chop down the tree in 2 hours, like to me, that's the stuff we should be learning. Like we should be learning how to set up the environment to be able to learn, as well as even project manage. Yeah. So like from a business standpoint, that setup and the context becomes so important because that's how we can execute more effectively or efficiently.
Dude, but we should talk. We should talk next week. It's been too long.
Well, I'm really no. I mean, Nate, I watch your stuff too. Devin, man, you guys are doing a great job. So I'm just humbled to have a chance to sit and listen and learn from you. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's great to see you, man. I'm glad you're on.
That's awesome.
Anyway,
I
sorry,
think
took
we're
it.
at time, and I hate to say it, but I think Nate's probably got to go. And I know, Devin, you got your VIP session for anyone who's part of the VIP. So, Nate, any last words before we get off?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks again for having me. It was great to meet you guys in New York. And if anyone didn't know, like Devin is the guy that put me onto NetEd. So I got to thank Devin again for his video that really opened my eyes to it. I was a make.com guy before that. So yeah, I love seeing what you guys are doing over there at Custom AI Studio, and just keep it up.
Thanks, Nate.
Good, man.
And thank you so much for the time here. And thank you everyone who joined. And Nate, I know we'll speak soon. Don't be a stranger. Next time you're in New York, dinner on me.
Okay, let's do it.
Dinner on us. All right, buddy.
See you guys.
All right.
We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Bye, everyone.